So, I've been fighting with it in my mind, with myself for a while, to decide if I should make this video or not. And after everything that I watched tonight, it's a message that I need to say, get out there, and take it for what it is. This is me, this is who I am, and I'm sharing my truth with everyone so that they can hopefully get a better grasp of what is occurring, and hopefully we can possibly see a better change out of it. I'm just one person, so I don't know if I can make a difference or not. Start at the beginning. I was raised by a stout Christian family, a mother who had her belief system and was raised in that, I don't want to sound rude when I say it, but that Christian belief of, God has all the right answers, the Bible's the absolute truth. So, through that, I lived in a small town that was predominantly white. I knew one black person before I went to high school. So, within that, when I moved from the small city I'd lived in into a more major city, I went to Fort Wayne, I saw the difference between the cultures. The difference between what I was raised as with the, Judeo-Christian white, ethnic background, to then come to Fort Wayne, where I was in a high school that was, I believe, 60% predominantly black. And with everything that was instilled into me from my parents and my mother, it was, I don't want to say taught, but it more or less was taught, indoctrinated into me, that this is how you should act. It was beat into me. I was spanked many times in ways that I considered torture from my mother, where she would put baking soda on my tongue or wash my mouth out, would make me be bare-assed in front of her parents, slapping me with a leather strap, things like that, that you either act this way or you're not acting right. So after being indoctrinated and had that mentality pushed on me, I then come to Fort Wayne to come to this, predominantly African-centric high school, where I thought, why can't they act like we act? Why aren't they acting the right way that I was told we should act our entire lives, my entire life up until that point. So in high school, and this is one of the things I don't share much with many people that have met me in the past, but when I was in high school, I ended up becoming a skinhead. I joined a skinhead group because, for my mindset, from what I was indoctrinated and taught from my mother, was that I should be proud of who I am. And for me, it wasn't about white power, it was about white pride. It was, I'm a white person, I'm proud for that, and I don't like the way that the black culture is acting, and why can't they assimilate and act like the white culture does? And I know now that was definitely a wrong mindset to have, but that was what I had as a teenager from what was indoctrinated into me from my parents. Thankfully, I've grown since then, have grown beyond that, and definitely know that that is not true whatsoever, and I have so much of me, hopefully that wasn't gunshots, have so much of me that doesn't feel right for having been that way, but through that, it was a learning lesson for me. I was able to see that culture, see that movement for what it was, and then grow beyond it. A lot of people aren't able to do that. With what's happening right now, a lot of my concern is possibly that that's where that stems from. There was a white supremacist leader by the name of Tom Metzger that he used to have a radio broadcast, and there was always the talk of RAHOA, the racial holy war. And what he told people to do back in the 90s, at the end of the 90s into 2000s, was to grow your hair out, become part of society, work your way in. Don't give up your ideologies and your beliefs, but just become part of the system. And then, down the road, do what needs to be done, in his mind. And a lot of the systemic racism that we have seems like it's been festering in those people that are in the system. The white people that unfortunately are using that, power of the police force to use brutality against the minorities of the community. Within all that, jump forward, I ended up getting married, divorced, and from the divorce, I joined the Navy. In the Navy, I broke my ankle 6 months in and ended up going through 6 surgeries and was told I would never be able to run again. Thankfully, I'm proving the doctors wrong. But, sorry, police sirens are distracting me. But from being in the Navy in that time, I was put on limited duty for 18 months where I worked in what's known as PSD, Personal Support Detachment. And I ended up meeting a lot of variety of officers and different people that came in there throughout all of the military branches and all the ranks and everything. I was stationed in Groton, Connecticut at the submarine base out there. Through it all, though, I witnessed and saw the absurdity of the U.S. government. I saw the overspending, the amounts of money that were just shuffled left and right. And so upon leaving, I ended up really not knowing where my life was to go, what to do. And then I got to the point of 2012. I'm trying to remember really what happened between 2008 and 2012, and it's more or less a blur. It was dead space, didn't do much of my life, mean much. But I hit a point in 2012 where everything didn't seem right. From everything I had seen from being in the military, all the struggles I went through, just to try to fight to get a disability, and all the paperwork pushing, all the bureaucracy, all the red tape. I finally got to the point in 2012 where I fell on my knees and I basically said a prayer at the time where I said I wanted the veil to be torn asunder and for myself to be actually seeing the real truth of life. So I started researching. I was having issues with my ankle still at the time, so having difficulty being able to work a full-time job and trying to live off of the small retirement stipend that I got. I joined college through the GI Bill, and college, it doesn't work out for me. I'm a 4-time college dropout. I get a semester or two in, and it just sitting through all the requirements and the classes and all the pitiable information that doesn't actually work towards what you're actually trying to get the degree for. So I ended up starting to research on my own and research, and it got to the point of, I'd say, almost a mental addiction, if you will, to want to try to learn more, to want to try to get more information, to want to see more, to understand more. My entire life, I never cared. It was watching movies. I was big into Star Wars and fantasy and playing video games all the time. It was all that distraction, never paying attention, just saying, okay, my life's decent enough for myself. What's it matter what happens around the world? But then with having the kids, I'm just like, what type of a world, though, am I going to leave for my kids? My ex was pregnant with my daughter when 9/11 happened, and I wept that night going, what type of country and world is this going to be? Thankfully didn't fall too bad then at the moment, but through all my researching and my studying that I started to do, it got me into Anonymous, and that's when I started to actually see the bigger picture of what was occurring. I worked with Anonymous for a good 2 years, I'd say, 1.5 years, 2 years, and then I met a girl that I fell in love with, and she convinced me that it wasn't good for my mental health to be studying all this stuff, to be doing all this stuff. And so from her request, she asked that I cut it off. So at the time, I deleted Facebook, I deleted all social media, I left it all behind, and I started moving forward in a relationship with her. But I've always had bouts of depression and dealt with depression, and a couple times been suicidal to the point of where I had to be locked up in a mental hospital for 5 days because of threatening to kill myself. I've had a belt around my neck twice in my life, ready to hang myself. So this world, the way it is, has always been a burden to my soul because of all the evil, of all the pain and the misery that goes on in it. And we as a humanity seems like we can be better than that, but it's the portion of humanity that isn't that is what causes the problem. And everything that I did with Anonymous, all the work that I did with them, all the stuff that I learned about how this life really functions is some really deep shit that a lot of people can't handle. It's been a lot on my mental health over the years, trying to cope with the stuff that I learned, the stuff that I saw, that trying to convince others that this is really what's happening, and everyone just going, oh, you're that tinfoil hat crazy conspiracy guy. But unfortunately, it's not like that, and now on our city streets throughout America, we are seeing everything played out. So getting back to Government Anonymous, it was on the standpoint of I met another person from Anonymous that went by the name of Joe Freedom Fighter at the time, and she showed me a lot of information, a lot of individual stories from other people, and a lot of evidence that pointed to the fact of the actuality of the underlying. And I know, see, it's mindsets. It's mindsets, not religious entities. That's the problem where everyone's been duped throughout life. That it's a satanic mindset. It's not there's an actual being, Satan with red hooves. It's something that infects the mind. It's a demonic possession, if you will. It's another spiritual entity possession within people. And what most people don't see, understand, know, or realize is that a large majority of these satanic groups throughout the world are the ones that are holding all the power. I make many messages where I refer to the cabal. The cabal is that group of people within those circles that are the ones that are orchestrating everything that is occurring around the world as we speak, that have been doing it for the past 10 years, that all the evidence has been there to show people, and no one wants to see it. No one wants to know what's actually happening. So, it got into the point of satanic cults. It got into the point of child sacrifices and abuse. It got into all these areas that people don't realize that, oh, that's just what they talked about in the heavy metal records. That's just what, was some off story in the Inquirer back in the 80s. No, that is real shit that is really going on around the world, and nobody understands that. A lot of what the research has led me to believe, and this is where it starts to sound like that crazy conspiracy theory, is where it falls down to the three sections of basically the holding of power, where you have the Vatican, you have the not Church of England, you have the Queen and the monarchy of England, and then you have DC and the United States as the basically strong arm military force of it. There are a lot of stories that have come out, a lot of leaks that have been shown, not just from Snowden and his NSA whistleblowing, but that the NSA, the CIA, are actually occultist organizations. A lot of the people within those organizations are actually Satan worshippers. There's a part of the satanic cult. There is a lot of the drug running, the child trafficking that goes around the world that is allowed by the CIA. It's not that they're working in any way to save us and protect us here in America as the citizens. They are the ones that are watching everything so that they can orchestrate everything behind the scenes, and people won't know about it. I worry about making a video and telling all this stuff and stating this stuff because it might put a target on my back. I don't know what can happen from this, but I'm telling my truth for what I have seen, for what I have heard from other people, for what I know in this world. So, that's where even other points of it get crazier, where you come to the point of adrenochrome, where you come to the point of ritualistic abuse to actually use that energy from the abuse of a child to support yourself and lift yourself up. That's what they do. And unfortunately, it's a lot of the people that have been looked up to as these wonderful politicians, these wonderful people in society. The Queen of England, there's stories from Canada where the Queen of England and her son, I can't remember which prince is Charles, where they went there and they went to the Canadian Native Americans, I forget the term for it, but those people that were in foster homes, the children that, people didn't know about, where the queen would show up and all of a sudden 10 children would be gone and nobody questioned it. Stories of mass graves being found on Catholic Church properties. The Vatican, you go to the Vatican and there's talks that the Vatican is actually holding a lot back of what is the actual truth of reality. The fact that the church was created as a way to store and keep the truth reality of the world from everyone else, to use the dupe of this is the Bible, this is what to believe, this is the creation method, when the real truth of what the creation method is only a piece and partial. Yes, there are some truths in the Bible, but it is not the full picture, and there are too many people that just blindly follow that faith without questioning it, without looking behind it, without researching, without seeing the bigger picture. I was even thinking in my head the other day, the sign of the cross. You're practically doing an upside down cross in the Catholic Church. Head, chest, shoulder, shoulder. That's not a up full-size cross, that's a downward cross. Anyway, so a lot of it led to the political organizations from DC. You have the Vatican, you have the Catholic Church and what they have been doing behind the scenes. You have the police and all the priests and all the child abuse cases over all these years. That's that same aspect. It's that taking that life force and energy from a small child and using it towards your own gain. It's sick shit. So, on the political side of the spectrum, you have basically the banking cartel families. Sorry for the language I use, but the banking cartel families and the political spectrum of the people that, even to this point, worship Moloch. The wiki links that came out, showing that Bohemian Grove is just more than, Alex Jones spouting off about some crazy conspiracy about it, is actually people like Podesta and Clinton and Obama and the others within that system and structure that use their wealth and influence to be able to go behind the scenes and do these vile acts on the people of the world. Within the groups that I've seen, I've followed, I've come to understand is the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, Rockefellers, George Soros, Rothschilds, Clintons, Obamas, Bushes. George Bush's family his grandfather made uniforms for the Nazi troops during World War II, if that tells you anything about his family. And that's the other, see, I'll be jumping over a lot in all this. That's another aspect of it, is the NSA, the CIA, excuse me, all of that comes a lot, okay, not all, sorry, but a lot of it comes from the National Socialists. It comes from the fact that the movement never ended. One of the things I'm thankful for with being a skinhead, and not saying it was a good thing, of course, but I'm thankful of what I learned from being in that organization, what I understood and learned about National Socialism. Part of my requirement was to read Mein Kampf, and it's something most people don't take the time to do and see, but a lot of the experimentation that the Nazis were doing was through satanic ritual, and that satanic ritual was brought over through the Operation Paperclip program to America. MK Ultra program was created by the CIA as a way to get split personalities. A split personality, for the most part, from a lot of the people that went through the torture and the horrible nature as a child, is a demonic entity within the person. It's splitting because that split, the controlled side can be, it's not possessed, but it can be controlled. It can be that other side of the person can be used and manipulated to do the bidding of what the control master wants. You really need to look into what MK Ultra is and what the hell it's been. There's many people that have talked that those celebrities out there that are pushing the narrative of this cabal are the ones that have been MK Ultra slaves, and that's why some of them freak out at times. People like Britney Spears and those major celebrities. There's a whole bunch I could list off, but again, my thoughts on going 5 different ways right now. So that's when you get back to the Bohemian Grove and you get back to the Bilderberg Group. These small, tight-knit organizations. Can't forget to mention the Edge organization. That's just a new one I found out this year because of Epstein. And that's where it all ties back in together, and that's where it's all going to sound like some mad, crazy conspiracy. So what you end up having is you have a set of politicians, a set of rich elitist types, the billionaires of the world, that meet privately together to discuss and say, this is what we want to see happen next in the world. This is how we want to push and drive what people do. There's so much talk right now that Black Lives Matter and what is occurring with all the civil unrest and all this racial division is because of George Soros funding this. He is trying to push and implement this racial divide of the people so that we are fighting ourselves and not actually fighting the common enemy that should be understood, that is these people. More police sirens. It's really popping off tonight. So when I started studying about Bohemian Grove, I started looking and seeing about the Bush family, and with George Bush being part of Skull and Bones. And with Skull and Bones, it then led me into looking into Masons. And a lot of the study into Masonic history and what the Masons are is that they are actually a cult that worships another deity they believe to be God, not the God of the Bible. That, for the most part, bringing up through the ranks, it's shown to the people and shown to the initiates that it's only God that we are worshiping, but the truth of the matter behind it all is that it is actually the other God, their God. Be it Moloch, that is worshipped by a lot of these elitists, be it Baal from the past, be it... I just came across another new book that I'm going to start reading of a German, excuse me, a German scientist and studier that is finding out and figuring out a lot of what all this is and piecing this all together too. And he basically referred to it in a way he referred to it as a spider god. So I am going to start researching more and trying to figure out what he meant by that. But almost into the sense of a Cthulhu type, Aleister Crowley sort of weird off-the-wall type of thing. So, I'm trying to keep my train of thought straight. So you get to the point of seeing where this group of satanic worshippers are then trafficking children. They're using children for the adrenochrome and for that energy that they come from the torture and the pain that the children receive. They're using them as slaves. They are pedophiles to the upteenth degree, and that's how this then fits into Epstein, and where all this starts piecing back together with everything that I learned from Anonymous of what was to occur from 2012 all the way up now to where we're at here in 2020. I stated to many people, I think it was in 2014-15, I was working at a place where I told them it's either going to be 2017, right after the election, or they're going to kick the can down the road and it's going to be 2020, right before the election. That's when they're going to pull the plug. It's all about that dictator dominantship, just like the Nazis had. The Nazis coming over through Operation Paperclip, and their beliefs in that infiltrated system is what has worked its way up through the government ranks here in America, and what has infiltrated the American government for the past 50 years. 60, 70 years. So, Epstein, from what I have pieced together, I basically have started to restudy everything again, restart to research again since all this started happening at the beginning of the year. And I don't remember both names, but Dr. George Church and there was another doctor from Harvard and MIT that they were funding the lab over in Wuhan, China, and that Jeffrey Epstein and Epstein Foundation was donating money to these doctors from these PhD laureates, doctors, head chair of Harvard chemistry department, to fund basically eugenics. The Bush family was into eugenics. The Epstein into eugenics. Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation is into eugenics, but most people can't understand and see how it is because, oh, they're helping. They're philanthropists. They're donating money. No, they're donating for their cause. They're trying to reduce population. They're trying to have population control. That's what this is all about. Back with Anonymous, I learned about what was referred to as the FEMA concentration camps. The fact that FEMA has been working to set up areas where they can instantly pop up a locked facility to take people off to. There was talks at the same time that guillotines were made, that a company ordered 5,000 guillotines that are being stored in Georgia right now for the possibility of mass executions across the country. There was, and again, this is all trying to come from memory and off the top of my head. I can't remember the name of it. There was an operation that occurred in the southwest portion of America, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it was a military operation on U.S. soil of going about and basically mapping the southwest quadrant of the U.S. for this, coming unrest. And I say the coming unrest, but this coming unrest has been planned, it's been premeditated, and it's been pushed into the system of everyone here. You have what a lot of people don't understand is the concept of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is where something is so vile, something is so outside the spectrum of what your brain can mentally handle that you cannot accept it to be true. You get to the point of, oh, people don't just rape children and sacrifice them still. It's too out there. I can't believe it. That's cognitive dissonance. That's turning your head the other way, burying your head in the sand, saying, nope, it sounds too out there. Nope, it can't be true. I won't look into it. So, with the FEMA concentration camps, the guillotines, everything has been set in place and been worked on for the past 10 years, along with training the National Guard, along with vetting people within the military. Obama, during his administration, he had questionnaires that went out to the military of, would you shoot a civilian? Would you fire on an American citizen? As a litmus test to find out if they were actually going to be the soldiers that needed to be there for this, standing army that we now have that is going to work towards quashing any rebellion that an American wants to bring up against our government. So, everything within that research and study was pointing to and showing that there was going to be this tearing apart of America. And a lot of it came down to the national debt, and it came down to the Federal Reserve Note. The Federal Reserve Note has been failing as reserve currency around the world, and we are hitting the point of where a digital currency is to be coming about. So this is a known orchestrated plan to help collapse that dollar. That is why I've been saying that there's going to be a stock market crash. I've been trying to tell people for years, get your money out of the stock market. It's not going to be there in the long run, because when this crash hits, we saw it tank, and we saw it tank because they used the virus. All those billionaires out there duped the American populace and used the virus and this whole shutdown in order to gain their own wealth. They were the ones that, as the market was tanking, were selling off their stocks so that they could get more money. They knew it was occurring, they knew it was going to come, and they were using that. CEOs, knowing that this was going to be happening, CEOs across the board since December have been resigning from their posts and leaving because they know it's not going to be the same after this happens. So we get to this point now of where we have this civil unrest that's been popping off. There is false flags. That's another thing that a lot of people don't understand and know about, is that our own government will create and see, this is where I'm bouncing around again, sorry. Create a whole situation where the problem that happens that they give us the solution for is the problem that they created. There's a lot of people looking back that, I can't remember who the president was at the time, World War II, pulled the ships out so there was no protection at Pearl Harbor to allow the Japanese to come in to bomb Pearl Harbor so that it would cause us to go into war. It would change the mindset of the American people to go to war when they didn't want to be a part of that prior. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, 9/11. When I was in the military, I went to New York City. I went to Ground Zero. There was people truthers handing out 9/11 documentation where I'm just like, what is this bullshit? Well, come to later when I worked with Anonymous, when I started to see all the evidence, started to see all the facts of the matter, started to see the fact most people don't even know still to this day or realize that there was billions of dollars of funds and records that were destroyed. I think it was 2 days before the towers fell, it was announced before Congress that, oh, we just misrepresented and lost billions of dollars in the books. And all of a sudden, those books burned up in the Twin Towers. Tower 7, look that up too. But that's neither here nor there. That's the past, and nothing can be done to change that now. All we have now is the future forward from this point, and if we change the system or if we allow them to still be our slave masters. Cognitive dissonance, that's where I left off at. So, social engineering, Edward Bernays. Someone's people really need to look up, really need to study and understand is Edward Bernays. He was the nephew of Freud, Sigmund Freud. And Bernays came here into America and started to work on social engineering. At the time, it was the 18? No, it was before the Spanish flu, I think, even. The teens or the 20s, somewhere in there, I can't remember where, but it all started with getting women to smoke cigarettes. He staged to have women in New York City light up during a parade and smoke cigarettes in public when that was a taboo thing for them to do. And then it led across the board for cigarettes to be picked up by women and smoking